Hi guys, so welcome to another episode of our life of our live streams on the different ways that people are moving to Germany. Some of you have probably been here for the other sessions we've had, and they've been fantastic. So today we have another session, and we're talking about PhD, the PhD pathway. So coming to Germany as a PhD student, and I had promised you two guests, but it is what it is. Something happened, and then our second guest was not able to make it today. But we have a capable guest, so worry not. We are covered. So thank you so much, Tobe, for giving us your time today. We really do appreciate it. Um, so before we continue with all our questions, please introduce yourself.
Okay, so before I start, I realized that it's like my name is not really showing properly on the screen, so I'll just retype it. My name is Tobe.
Okay.
If you can just confirm this. So my name is Tobe. I would say I'm a PhD student, but I'm also a full-time academic. I am still holding an academic position in Nigeria, and I'm here on study leave pursuing a PhD. I'm currently in my, I would say 4 years now, how time flies. I think I started during the winter semester of 2020, 2021. And now we have spent 4 years already. And I'm gradually getting to the fifth year. But at this stage, I'm just wrapping up. I'm kind of like finishing up my writing and publishing. Hopefully before the year runs out, you should be addressing me as doctor.
Abio.
Yes.
I'll be telling people, do you know all the not do you know who I know? Do you know all
Mhm.
the people I know?
Yeah. So what else about myself? My PhD research is in biological control. I work with microorganisms, using microorganisms to control pests on the field. So it's a blend of biology, agriculture, and bioinformatics. And the beautiful thing is that I interface between academia and industry. So it's not just about doing academics for the shelf, but something that can actually go into the market and then build industry. I got this inspiration from the guy who supervised my master's. He left the university and then started his company. So what he does is that he gets students from the university and then bring them to his lab to do their master's research. And
Okay,
then
interesting.
so that synergy is really nice, very beautiful. So you know that when you're done with this research, there is always where you can apply it in the market,
Yeah.
or you can stay back in the academia to do whatever you want to do. So that's just a bit about myself. What else again am I leaving out? Maybe you can just kind of remind
I
me.
think you have covered the most important things. And it's
Great.
really cool that you're doing both. So it's really like the best of both worlds. So
Mhm.
it's fantastic. Amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. Okay. Let's now go to all the story parts. The bombarding you with all the questions that we have. Meanwhile, as we're going on, if you have any
Easy.
questions, please put them on the comment section and we would attend to them. However, I have a few questions here because over time, of course, I have collected people have asked me questions that I don't have answers to. So I've brought it to the people that know what they're doing. Okay, first question is what are the main requirements? Sorry if you see me looking this way, it's because I'm reading the questions on my tab on this side.
Cool.
Okay. So what are the main requirements for international students to apply for a PhD in Germany?
So right. um, the beauty with Germany is that if you have if you have a master's degree or equivalent to a master's degree, roughly a degree that sums up to equivalent to 120 ECTS. So I'll break that down. So that's the European course transfer system. So if you have a bachelor's degree in Nigeria, I think a bachelor's degree equates to about 100 or 80 or 100. So most times you have a master's degree covers it. And then you have an idea of what you want to do. And then you get in touch with a potential supervisor who can accept you for an individual PhD program, or you sign up to a structured PhD program where they already have like a design structure. and then you get to write up a proposal or a concept note, and then you attend some courses, which in a way they're not really compulsory, but because of the structured PhD, you go through them. So, what do you require as an individual? You have like a master's degree, and then an idea of what you want to do, like a concept note, a proposal, a draft proposal, which will be refined along the way, and then funding, of course. This is where it becomes a bit tricky. Um, I doubt anyone goes into a PhD with his own money because it's quite expensive, not just because of your day-to-day living, but also for the research work, depending on the kind of PhD you want to do. So a master's degree, a concept note or a proposal, draft proposal, and then a source of funding. And then you can kickstart. Oftentimes, with a master's degree, a strong master's degree, and some years of experience as well also count. I mean, this also counted for me. Years of experience in carrying out research or some publications as well will also count in your advantage. If you're going in for a scholarship, then that becomes your advantage point. If you have some publication, if you have some experience already conducting research, that will count to your favor in getting the scholarship that will sponsor your PhD. So I don't know if I kind of like answer the question, touching it around, but we can dive in deeper each of the part that you need more clarity.
Yes, we'll start off with the scholarship parts since we've already gotten there, so we can talk
Yeah.
about that because it's always a big deal. Money, 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 money. How do people go about scholarships, and how do they how do they go about scholarships generally for
Luckily, Germany has one of the largest database of scholarship sources, I think, in Europe, and one of the best sources is the DAAD. It's one of the best database, not just because they feature a lot of scholarship funded by them, but they also feature scholarship from other funding bodies like the BMF, the uh, the science foundations, and some other private funding bodies also, direct their channels through the DAD database. So that's one area I would go to
Mhm.
search for scholarship. Within the DAD, there are several kinds of PhD scholarship. There's a research grant, there's a PhD scholarship for economic development. There's also a PhD scholarship that is directed to a certain niche. There is also a PhD scholarship that supports students at certain stage of their research work. Maybe you already started your PhD back in your country and you need funding for a certain technical part that will bring you to Germany, and then they will fund just that part alone. It could cover your living expenses. It could also go to an extent to covering the bench fee of the lab or whatever research you want to do, and then also cater some other technical part and also non-technical part as well. But I would say the DAAD website is one of the best way you can get information, all kinds of information. Of
I'm
course,
trying
there
to
are
put the
other
website now on the comment
uh,
section as well,
on
so
the
that people
comment
could
section.
also.
So it's
Yeah, I've put it
DAAD.
now. I've put it already.
All right, good, cool, cool.
Yeah, so
So
that's
aside
that's.
from the DAD, there are lots of other scholarship sites. You can talk about scholarshipinpositions.com, or there are so much of them that you can't begin to, count all of them. But once you search, a quick Google search will give you an idea. There is also a dedicated portal. It's called Research in Germany, which is dedicated. Sorry, I think that is either Siri.
Alexa, Abba.
That is Alexa
Siri.
or Siri. Sorry.
You called it
Um, so,
research portal, yeah?
yeah, there's a research portal. It's called Research in Germany.
Okay.
So what they do that they curate, sources of funding and also research opportunities from private organizations, companies, and also the public institutions as well. Um, There are also cases where you have institutions that advertise for a position for just a specific program or project, and then they only attract students that are qualified, and you don't easily see those ones on DED portal or some of the public portal. So it would be nice that people also follow some of those private channels where they can also get some of this funding opportunities. Some professors post their some opportunities on either their LinkedIn page or their Twitter page, which you call X now. So there are lots of spaces. Unfortunately, people restrict themselves to the main sources like the DAD, and then they stop there. And it's very competitive. So you can imagine millions of people are applying every quarter or every single period for those limited funding or limited positions. So it's good to kind of like use your network while searching, but also contact people who have already been there. And that's why you have lots of alumni community. I could remember, I think this is a good time to also tell this. When I was doing my master's, I did my master's in Belgium, but I also came to Germany for the research work. While I was in Belgium, as a student representative for Africans, which was quite competitive then, that was my first foray into politics. I realized that I had opportunity of sitting down to review the documents of applicants that were coming in for the next year. And I didn't know that was possible. So, but I was in the room with other professors, reviewing those documents. And if you come across a document that's a name that you know, of course you find a way to move it forward. It's all legal. It's not illegal. As long as you can vouch that this is a good student. I can vouch for his university. I can vouch for his credit score, whatever he presents, his transcripts. Then you can put the name forward, and it will be considered. And they really appreciate someone who knows an insight to this candidate.
About this person.
Exactly. And just choosing based on what they see on paper, because the paper doesn't really tell the whole story. So I was opportune to sit on that committee for 2 years throughout my master's degree, and being able to review files and then also recommend it. So imagine being in contact with students or younger colleagues who are also applying. Of course, I will encourage them to apply, because they will stand a better chance, because I will sit in there and make a case for them. Because I remember that year we had an issue where they only wanted to take one student from Nigeria, which has been the tradition for a long time. You will find 4 students from Ethiopia, lots of students from Kenya, because of economic reasons. You can tell the coffee and wherever. And so they had this student, and I was vouching for another student as well, and then they said no, and we went back and forth. So in the end, they said they would start all over again. And they said they will put this other guy in a what do you call it?
A short list for the next set.
Yeah, exactly, in a short list. And you and I know that the short list means that somebody on the main list will have to drop before you consider. Who would drop? Who would drop? Nobody would drop. So I made a case, and for the first time, we had 2 students from Nigeria. So for me, so you can imagine having that kind of opportunity to be in an alumni community, or getting in touch with people who are already there. So, for instance, just as we're having this program, of course, I'm in contact with some of my students back in Nigeria, or some younger colleagues who also want to, and then getting that first-hand experience, which is why programs like this are very, very important. You don't get to see everything on the website. You also, to glean from the experience of those who have done it, some of the I's and T's that they need to, dot and cross while engaging it. So, but to answer your question, there are lots of, portals, but DAD.de is the first port of call, but then expand it. For me, I got my PhD funding from DAD. It's called the DAD EPOS. which is the Scholarship for Development Research, and it's in a structured PhD program. So what happened is that I had to apply to this institute where I'm currently. Now the institute has a collaboration with DAD that any student that they select will now be transferred to DAD for funding,
Oh,
which is
okay.
different from applying to DAD directly. You click on any of the scholarship there and apply. But the EPUS demands that you have to go through the institute, get the institute to accept you, go through the interviews, whatever preliminary stage. Then the institute will now transfer the student to the DAD. Then you now go to the DAD portal to apply there officially. But you're already selected.
Okay.
Except something happens, something strange happens before you be dropped. But once the institute has selected you, you're say 95% certain that you would. In fact, the
You
DAD
get
will
the funding.
contact you and tell you that your name has been sent to them. Please go ahead and apply.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool. So it means that, well, depending on the scholarship in this case, sometimes you might have to first apply to the school. Sometimes you might have to first get the scholarship first before you go apply.
Yes, that is one route, and I think it's I find it very convenient that the hardest route has been crossed already, getting the institute to accept you. The other route, when you apply for the DAD, they'll ask you to go search for a hosting institution or a hosting professor. Now, the professor knows that DAD will fund this, but then they also need to check if they will want to work with you, your competence, your research interest, if it aligns with theirs. This is also one option. The other option will be you have your funding. So I have a colleague who came with a foreign scholarship. I want to call it foreign because Nigeria is also foreign as well. So she came with a scholarship from Nigeria, but she needs a professor here. So it's called the PTDF scholarship, the Petroleum Trust Fund scholarship. So the professor here will have to accept her first, and then sign, and then kind of register her, and then approve that she go ahead and register. But I would not encourage anyone. So this is going out live, right? So that it doesn't come back to haunt me. But the truth is that some of the scholarship that come outside are not really reliable. Because it takes a change of government to truncate it. For
Yeah, very
instance,
true.
one government comes in and then there's a line of scholarship that's supposed to last for 5 years or 6 years or 4 years, as the case may be. And then the new government comes in and say, no, we're going to sign an order. I can see Trump signing executive order, canceling everything. So imagine one president comes in and say, all this scholarship, I'm canceling them. So what happens? I know of someone who's actually going through that right now. Came in with that kind of scholarship and then going through the towards the middle, and then the scholarship stops. So
but is that not also possible in Germany? If, for example, you get a DAD scholarship, is it not also possible that a change in government can just
no. So it's different. It's different. So for DAD, for organizations like DAD, they have a long roadmap. Okay. And then this money is already signing to be released. So for that duration that they're going to accept students, they are sure that the money will be released.
It's okay.
Except you have a drastic case of, say, a world war or a tsunami or an earthquake. So you cannot predict, but
those kind of things, yeah.
Exactly. But having a government just sign it out, no. The same thing happened during before I left for Belgium for my master's. We almost didn't go for that program because when you got to our own badge, the government then, as of 2013, I guess 2013, the government did not approve for the funding for the next 5 years. So that means that The batch of students until 2012 will be catered for, but they are not certain from 2013 to the next 5 years.
Excellent.
So they did not agree to accept students because they were not certain. So we had that people went down with demonstration, they did all kinds of things, lobbying. Then the government agreed to sign it that, okay, they will sponsor this for a certain period. Then they accepted us.
Interesting.
So it is different. It's about policy and then people being true to themselves and discipline to really agree to what they've signed. And exactly. So
Cool.
you see, the thing is that when you ask me a question, am I go off, am I derail because story plenty, and then I
Plenty.
share
Oh,
personal experience. So, but once I start derailing, please bring me back.
that's okay. That's okay. While you were talking, you talked about structured PhD program, which is what you're doing. And I believe there's a different type of PhD program as well. So can you tell us the difference in the types of a PhD program and how they work generally?
Okay, so an individual, so there's the traditional, what you call individual traditional PhD. A student is either a professor signs you up for a particular project, or you get a research grant, and then you're at liberty to choose which courses you want to do. If you want to do any course, you're at liberty to choose your, to a large extent, the kind of research line you want to follow, as long as your supervisor is in sync with it. You're at liberty to, you have lots of flexibility on what you want to do. Okay. In a way, it's nice, but then most times you are left alone. So if you
Okay.
succeed, you succeed. If you don't succeed, then you carry your cross yourself. But it's not often the case, because in Germany you have like a team of supervisors, and then when you're close to the end, you need to have like a committee, and then you also need to sign up to the promotion college. That's what they call doctorate program in Germany, promotion. And then so you have like a committee guiding you, but then bulk of the activities left to you. On the other hand, the structured PhD, you already have like a set of courses that you have to do. There are some that are compulsory. There are some, in my own case, it's called the disciplinary courses, and there are some that are indisciplinary courses. So disciplinary courses are believed to be set of courses that will guide you to do your research based on the thematic structure of the institute. So you need to take these courses, you need to attend the classes. You don't necessarily need to write any exams. Maybe at the end you might do like a 10 paper, or write like a small project, or do like a group work and make a presentation. And then this can last maybe for like 3 months, 6 months, or even a year, depending on how it's structured. Oh, when we came, we took a lot of courses, lots of courses. Many of them were complete trash. Many of them, many of
As
them did
usual.
not interest me at all. But then I had to take them, because you also need to attain a certain credit you need, which is just entirely clear. It's not enforced as a master's program, because in PhD you have some flexibility. The main thing is that as long as you are meeting your objective and your supervisor is happy with what you're doing, and at the end you can really produce results and have a good dissertation. So the structured PhD, which I prefer, because you have like a guide, it's like a check boxes. Okay, you do this one, you do this one, and then you have your meeting date with the supervisory team, and then you also have like a team of people where you can present from time to time. You present to them from time to time, so you're kind of like keeping each other in check. So in a way, it kind of like it gives you like a balance, that you're also actually going on the right direction. But some might not like it, because compared to the traditional, it's kind of like rigid. So you can imagine spending a whole 6 months doing courses that you're not interested in. You're not going to write exams. Why am I?
Why
Why
am
am
I
I?
doing this?
Exactly. So you can imagine a science student, for instance, myself doing molecular biology, that I have to stay in the lab, and I'm now taking courses in uh, in governance or democratic whatever, or in social, or it doesn't align with me. But in the
But
end,
why do they do that though? Why do they expand the things that you need to do beyond what is
exactly,
like the core?
because the main interest has to do with meeting the thematic, meeting the aim of the institution. So every institution has like a thematic structure, things
What do you
that's
mean by
what.
thematics? You know, say I don't really,
So
I know follow you go school.
so take for
What is
instance,
thematic structure?
my institute is called the Center for Development Research. So every PhD program has to align with some of the key research points, the themes. So there's a structure for those themes. That's a thematic structure. So
Okay.
we do research in gender equality. We do research in land restoration. We do research in this. So your PhD needs to align in some of these themes, and because they want to also create like an interface between science and application, you should know a bit of every part, so that when the need arises, you can really defend whatever you're doing. So you should be
Okay.
able to know how the research work you're doing in the lab can apply to the people on the field. How does gender equality apply to the research work you're doing? And if you don't know
Mm,
certain things about that, then you will not be able to answer those questions, or you'll not be able to defend what you're doing. For instance, when I did my proposal, I didn't know that I even had to do like a questionnaire to go to the field and interview people. It wasn't part of what I was supposed to do. But to
mhm.
fit into the thematic structure, to check that boxes of the theme of the institute, I had to do it. And along the line, I enjoyed it because it exposed me to certain things that I didn't know previously. It exposed
Mhm.
me to the real on-field application of what I was about to do.
Doing.
And which, if I did not know that, I probably would not have, had it in mind that this was going to affect this certain group of people in a peculiar way, or a unique application of this end product to this specific group of people. So I wouldn't have known that.
Mhm.
Um, so
Cool.
that is why I kind of like this kind of this structured PhD. And
Mhm.
then and again, when it comes to doing something for the student, take for instance, when we arrived, they already had appointments for us to do the city registration, to open our bank accounts. So there's already the secretariat that caters that for the students. They already had like a Google sheet for us to write down our names to help us get accommodations quite easily for students. But
Oh, that's cool.
for the other for the traditional PhD,
Individual
you
one.
do everything on your own. You go look for a bank account by yourself.
Ah.
You apply for city registration on your own. Life was made a little bit easy. And then when I went for my interview, for my visa interview, it was
Mm.
really straightforward because they already sent a document ahead of time in support of not just DAD or the institute, but my institute did that, sending the letter ahead of time um, to support my application. So there are lots of perks that comes with going with a structured PhD.
It's actually really cool. Personally, so I think that's a lot better, even
Mhm.
though it seems like it's a lot more
Rigid.
stressful. Like you have said, yeah, a lot takes a lot more from you than the but when you look at the big picture, it makes a lot of sense. However, how do
Mm.
you decide if you're going to go for the structured or the single? Do you decide that on your own, or is it based on the school that you get or something?
At the point of application. So while I was applying, I already knew that this was a structured PhD program.
Oh, okay.
So if I had picked up an advert from a professor that he's looking for a student to fit into a particular project, then I would have known that would have been a traditional PhD. Yeah.
Okay.
So at the point of application, you already get an idea of what kind of PhD that will be.
So technically, you don't have complete charge over whether you're going to do structured or not.
So
So,
now let me really emphasize this. In as much as we call it structured and traditional, sometimes there are overlaps. Okay,
mhm.
there are overlaps in terms of The structured will have certain courses that you have to do. So these are compulsory. You have to take those courses, right? But then when you start the program, it begins to become more flexible. Begin to choose how you want to do your research. You don't have to like follow, you know, you don't have
Particular
to,
pattern or style.
exactly. So it's not entirely on paper. You have structured and traditional, right? But once you start doing it, then you begin to, navigate um, the nuances. But then at the beginning, it's quite clear that you're going into a traditional PhD or you're going into a structured.
Structured
By the
PhD.
time you start growing white gray hair in it, then
You will know.
then you start navigating. There are some who started as groups at the very beginning, and then everybody went their way because the group wasn't working anymore. Or but there are also some that like group of students that work with a particular professor, and he or she wants them to work in a certain way. Of course, everyone works in their own research work, but they will say, okay, every Thursday in a month, every first Thursday of the month, you must have a presentation.
Okay.
Everybody in that group must have a presentation. So whether you've been sleeping every day or as long as it's first Thursday, you have something to
You have
present.
to do.
Exactly. So they are always they have their pecs, and then sometimes um personally I really prefer the structured.
The
But
structured one.
ultimately, what matters is the relationship with your supervisor. I hope we'll get to talk about that in the course of the discussion.
So you talked briefly about being able to. We will get back to the relationship with professor
Mhm.
pretty soon. Or you talked briefly about visas, even they being able to send you stuff that supports your visa application and makes the whole process
Yeah.
very easy. So what the question now is, what is the visa and residence permit process like for PhD students?
Okay. So if you are so if you're coming in with a research grant scholarship, um, based on your level of experience and so I'm looking for a better way to put it. But ultimately, you have like a study visa, but there's also a research visa as well. But that applies mostly to postdocs. Sometimes PhD students also get the research visa, but
Oh,
uh,
okay.
most times PhD students come in with a student visa, a study visa, which is also similar to what the master students are also coming with. But there are students who come in a project. So I have some colleagues that came in a project and they are paid salary from that project. So they came in with a research visa.
So,
So
okay.
from that salary, they pay their taxes. But for those that came on scholarship, they only get a stipendium, and you don't pay
Oh,
taxes with stipendium. So you come as a student visa. You come with a student visa. So
oh,
within
okay.
our
I need to
within
go
our
and correct the information I told them before.
that
I
what
told
happened?
them that I told them in the other video that research visa is also PhD students also get research visa. So I need to go and update that information.
That's what that's no, I'm collaborating that. So there are
Oh,
PhD
okay.
students that come with a research, contract.
Yeah, but this
They're
is a
working
this
in
is a
projects.
and this is an outlier situation. It's not like the regular thing. The regular thing in this case would be that, or am I getting it wrong? The regular
No,
thing is
you
you're
you
coming with
if
a student visa.
the reg is student visa. Like I came with a student visa. So I came
Yeah.
with a German scholarship. So it's a student visa. I have a
Now, consider.
colleague. I have a colleague who joined a project. So the case of someone who was newly promoted to a professor, a junior professor, and then she has some funding for project and she needs students, right? So she will advertise and then people will apply to her directly. And then she gets to choose and then submit the name to the university that, okay, I'm taking these guys on. So they will come in under as employees working on that
Okay.
project and they come in as researchers. So they get that research visa.
Visa.
Yeah.
Cool. Now considering that let's say with the regular way, which is a student visa, This is the same
Yeah.
thing as the masters. Is there any preferential treatment given to PhD students when applying for masters study visa? For example, when if you have a first class, for example, you are given, at least in Nigeria, I don't know if this happens in other countries, but at least in Nigeria, those with a first class get priority for visa appointments and things like that. Does this happen as well for PhD students?
Wait, I didn't know that.
Ah,
Why didn't I get priority? No, but if I understand your question clearly,
Mm.
so you mean people who got a PhD scholarship get priority in visa appointments?
Yes. So in terms of how quickly they're able to get their appointment.
No, no, I don't think I don't think there's any priority because when I got my invite
Mm-hmm.
for the visa application, I think that was in Lagos.
Mm-hmm.
I was there with a lady who applied for masters. She also
Mm-hmm.
got DAD scholarship as well. So she
Okay.
came for her own appointment. But that was a very interesting period because that was at the peak of Corona. So you can 2019, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very erratic. So the what the embassy or the consulate was doing there was to kind of like select students who had scholarship. So they
They
were not
still
really
do that
cutting.
though. They
Oh, they
still
still do
do
that,
that.
right? Oh, okay.
Yes. They give preferential treatment to first class holders, scholarship holders. Those guys get appointment earlier than those with than normal people like the rest of us when those sabi book.
No, I think the reason why that is the case, I don't know about the first class guys, but for the scholarship, they are certain that the embassy, the country where they are going to, already accepted them. They already offered to sponsor them, so they are certain about the source of funding.
And that is if the scholarship is from Germany, yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Not carry from your local government chairman to Germany. No, if the scholarship is coming from a German government, of course, mostly German government, or
Mm-hmm.
even private, or even companies, they also
Mm-hmm.
respect that as well.
Oh, that's
So they get that priority. I think one of the main reasons is because one, they are certain of who is inviting or where they are going to, and they're also certain about the source of funding as well.
cool.
Yeah.
So largely, we will say start looking for scholarship on time. Find
Oh
scholarship,
yes.
so your life will just generally be a lot easier, for
You know,
all the things that needs
I
to be
see,
done.
I see people who complain that they applied 5 times, 6 times, they didn't get anything. Omo, I can't count how many scholarship I applied for. I applied a lot.
Give us the gist. How many did you apply
Yeah,
for?
I applied a lot.
Give us a rough idea, because
Hmm.
it's important that people know that it doesn't go as smoothly all the time. Because sometimes people assume that the people who are doing this now, they had it very easy.
Hmm.
So give us a rough idea, like how many
You know,
applications you do.
it will take me back to because I also did my master's with a scholarship.
You,
Um,
you really sabi book, oh. You just dey collect scholarship up
no,
and
no,
down.
no, 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 no. Oil, it's oil. So,
Oh my
um,
god.
I think for my master, I started applying for scholarship when I was in the 400 level or so. So then I knew that because of what people told us, if you
Mm-hmm.
finish with a good grade, very, very good grade, you get scholarship. So that has already been in my head right from beginning. So I
Mm-hmm.
started applying. I think I applied to, let's say, 20 for my
Okay.
master's,
Mm-hmm.
and I got 5. So
Kimon.
it's now left for me to now say, okay, so where are we gonna go now?
Mm.
So we had one from Newcastle upon Tyne. I think that's Newcastle upon Tyne, and there's a Glasgow, and there's Kent University, and there's one other one again. But there is this one in Belgium. So
Mm-hmm.
I love to travel. I heard that with the Schengen visa, you can travel Europe.
So you gotta go Belgium.
Exactly. So I went to Belgium. So that was the reason I went. Now after my masters, um, I wanted to continue the PhD, but I already had a job in Nigeria with a private company, which I had to leave, and then the CEO then was already on my neck, and I actually wanted to do a PhD, but there was a caveat then for Nigerians applying for DAD, because the lab where I did the master's says that the guy said that he gets lots of DAD students. Of course, they were DAD students doing PhD at that time in the lab. So we tried applying then, but they said that I think the reason they gave then was that Nigerians and Cameroonians, was it Nigerians, have to go back and apply.
Why? What did we
I don't
do?
know. And
What did we
this was 10
do?
years ago. This was 10 years ago. So I went back home now. But when I got back home, I got engaged in consultancy with a institution, with a private company, and then got into the university as a lecturer. I left the private company. So I kind of like said, okay, let me just get some experience and put something on ground. And that really helped me a lot, because in the process, I got a connection with the school where I finished for my master's. They needed an alumni who works in the university for a project, and they needed about 6 universities in Africa. So I stood in for my university, and it was really a huge opening for not just me, but also for the university, because we got hundreds of thousands of euros in grants for equipment, for traveling, for training, for
Oh, that's cool.
staff, for my technical team, and for other researchers in my group to also travel to go do their research work. So that kind of like gave me a sense of purpose, like connecting, using the opportunity of being in Europe, but also connecting the resources here to leverage people back home. So in that process, I was already applying for a PhD, and so the project was still on when I left. So I was in Germany managing the project with my colleague back home, also as the on-ground guy implementing the main stuff. Actually, the project just finished in December, so and it was for like
Oh,
5 years. So that really gave me a sense of purpose, you know, um, being able to, you know, gain that traction and being in good terms with the people. Of course, if I wasn't in good terms with the people where I did my masters, they wouldn't
yeah,
reach
you
out.
can't come back to them on top.
Exactly. They won't reach out
Yeah,
to me. And
yeah.
and this is actually something that I'm really focused on now. So while applying, I already have like some publications. I already had like some experience teaching students, supervising students. So it was really easy for me to now apply again for another scholarship, to apply to this institute, and then did the interviews. And the interesting thing was that the man who interviewed me, who later became my supervisor, saw on my CV that this guy, certain guy, supervised me for my master's, and he knows the guy for over 30 years. So he quickly called the guy and asked him about me.
Interesting. That's
So that
cool.
was so that was an open door for me. So I already had a
Yeah.
good interaction with this guy who supervised my master's work, he's retired now anyway. Um, and he put in a good word for me, wrote a very nice recommendation, and that was how I was able to scale through here. So
Go through.
um,
Which is exactly
people,
what you said in the beginning about it being very normal for people to recommend putting good word for people if they
yes,
know the person.
exactly. And then that
Cool.
also build in, to what I might share later when we talk about building a relationship with a supervisor, which is very, very
Very,
important.
very
Very,
important.
very important. Because that leads to whether you're going to succeed
Or
in your
not.
PhD. In fact, that leads to whether you're going to be frustrated while doing because people are seeing premium shege with their supervisors.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Before we get to those relationships, just let's first talk about the process of coming first.
Mhm.
So you talked previously about how some countries have to have some, will I say, they have been put in certain levels, some sort of black book, maybe not a black book, but there's some sort of limitations.
Mhm.
So what would you say are the biggest challenges that international PhD students face when moving to Germany?
Hmm. Challenges in terms of individuals, or challenges as an entity as a country as which are the challenges, because these are two different challenges.
We can
Both
touch
were
both aspects. We can
okay
touch both.
for individuals. Not having a good transcript for either your masters or your bachelors and masters.
What do you
Bachelors.
mean by not having a good are there transcripts that are not good?
Oh well, okay, maybe not good is not the right word, but a strong, yeah, good transcripts. Now, I mean, having good
You mean
grades.
like results or
Yes, your
grade?
transcripts. Yeah,
So
like your bachelor's transcripts. Um, if you don't have a strong transcript, then because it's very competitive, right? So that's also that's a big challenge, especially for those who are in school. So if you're in school watching this, please do well. Then
think future. Think future. Don't go and be chilling now.
exactly,
Future.
and then hmm, because you're coming to Germany, the language is always a barrier. In as much as some people, um, most programs are in English, most PhD programs are in English, but you will not sleep in the office now. You will not sleep with your supervisor. You have to go to markets. You have to see a doctor. You have to open bank accounts, and that desire to learn the basics of a new language needs to be there. So there are some people that they will try and try and try, like myself, to master the German language. I don't know about you, okay,
It didn't
but
work. It didn't work in.
so that challenge can be very frustrating, and it can also deter
Yeah.
people from really pursuing it. What other challenges? These on an individual level, right? Also, getting the funding, of course, is a big challenge. It's very competitive, and that ties to getting a good grade. At least if you have a good grade, at least you're already in the pipeline, right? But if you don't have a good grade, then, but
It makes it complex.
even those with a good grade, it's very competitive getting the scholarship. And even if you get a scholarship that caters for your daily living, what about the amount that we cater for your research work? Because sometimes the scholarship doesn't really cater for everything in your research work, and it's something that they don't really say so much. Because, for instance, in my own research work, what the scholarship provided for my research is not really is not it's small. So this now ties again to a relationship with your supervisor.
Supervisor. In fact, let's even go to this relationship with supervisor.
But let me let
Let's
me
just
let me let me let me touch again in the other challenges again.
okay, yes, okay.
That
I'm
is
sorry for being all over
no,
the place.
I understand. But because you see, sometimes what we do as individuals, goes a long way to to affect other people. So antecedents matters a lot. Take for instance someone who lied in his transcript and then later found out that this person lied.
Right.
In a way, it affects almost everyone from that country.
Because you already set a bad image already.
Exactly.
You just feel like these
Yes.
people cannot be trusted. So
And and then you have like people who have a certain impression of people from some countries, and because they're from this country, then no, this I know of somebody from this country who did me shege. And it can be very personal because the people who do the selections are human beings.
yeah.
It's not a
And they're going to
machine.
be
It's not an
working with
AI.
you personally.
Exactly.
So
And then you have this person who has an interaction with someone from a certain country, and because of that, they just have an impression. So it really plays a lot. But you and I know the situation of our country. I don't want to dabble into that because it might sound political, but then we are not in the best of places. That's the best way to put it. We're not in the best of places, and it has a huge impact. And only very few institutions or people would like to treat matters case by case.
yes.
People will want to like clump everything, but you have a very few genuine people who want to say, okay, I know what the country is like, I know what the political system is like, but I want to get to know you. I want to treat your own file based on your merits and not because of what the group says or what I see on TV. So these are also challenges that affect people, because I can tell you now the number of Nigerians coming in have really reduced. This I know for a fact. In fact, there was a scholarship that used to, you see the list of eligible countries, and Nigerians are no longer there anymore. Ghanaians are no longer there
Wow.
anymore. This I know of one that I know of one. Nigerians are no longer there, and they couldn't even give any reason. So these also affect. So you can imagine they have a list of 50. They have a vacancy for 50 people, and these 50 people, you have people from a certain country. If there was already a portion of like 3 or 4 for Nigerians, but because of what is happening, we've completely lost that position, and they
Lost
give that
that.
position to other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So it
That's
plays out.
terrible.
Exactly, and you cannot control it.
Terrible.
You can't
Yeah.
control that.
This is why it's important anywhere we go. We're always talking about representing your people. Some people feel like representing your people is a burden, but I always feel like it's very important that we are conscious of the fact that, just like you have said, everything we do has a ripple effect. It's going
Yeah,
to affect so many other people and not just
yeah,
you. So
yeah,
while we are, especially most of us, moving abroad and stuff like that,
yeah.
as we get the opportunity, please let's respect the opportunity and respect those who would benefit from you being just a good person, because
I
if other
mean,
people did wrong, you too will not get the opportunity as well.
yeah. I mean, thinking about people who will benefit from it, because sometimes we come in and then we are so selfish about everything, and we just want to like enjoy ourselves, and we don't think about other people that will come after us. We pass
Yeah,
the bridge, we burn it. To hell
very
with
bad.
other people. I mean,
Oh, yeah, very bad. Very, very bad. Okay, so we've talked about all these challenges, but over the last couple of minutes, we're talking about relationships with people. So let's talk about relationships with your professor. So I think that will probably come into navigating the PhD program itself.
okay. Okay. Now, let me double back with what I said earlier with the supervisor. I mean, my supervisor, the guy who supervised my master's supervisor, who put in a good word for me uh, to my current supervisor, and it can be something as very simple as an attitude, or a comment, or an action, or a hobby that would just kind of pique the interest of someone, and then they just like you. So towards the end of my masters, I was with my I was with the professor. Actually, this was the guy who left the university to start his own company. So and getting to see him, it's not so easy. So but that day I was with him, and then we're just kind of like talking. We just kind of saying common things about Nigeria, Africa, Germany, lifestyle, and he brought out a German book about the cultural artifacts of Nigeria. It was written in German. It was written by a German guy, and this guy actually went around Nigeria, collected some of these sculptures from the Nok Art, the Benin Kingdom, and these are some of things that I love reading. So we engage in a very deep conversation, and I also told him some of the books that I've read, and then that was it. Now, so imagine 2015. That was when we had this conversation, which was in person. 2019, this current supervisor was about to interview me. He reaches out to this man to ask him about me. And the man put in that word that, oh, he loves reading a lot. And we talked about several books. Shikena. Now, this man interviews me. I passed through the interview. My first meeting with him when I came to Germany was about books. This was how we spent the next 1 hour talking about novels. Till date, right? Each time we sit to review my work, we spend the first 30, 45 minutes talking about the new books we are reading now. It has nothing to do with my research work. But that's not like I didn't know this meant a lot to him until when we had this Christmas meeting, Christmas gathering, And then I just passed by to say hello to him, and then he called my attention, and then he told some other people that, yeah, that we have a book club together. And then we started talking about the books we were reading. I didn't take that to be
To
very
be a book club.
exactly, but that was the foundation of this cordial relationship. And so it could be as flimsy as anything. But of course, I was also playing my part and in making sure that I was also doing what I was supposed to do as a researcher, and then also keeping up that social part. So he became very interested in me. We can talk about anything. We'll talk about politics, and it's not typical. It's not very typical that you have this kind of interaction, relationship with someone. So the whole point here is that I'm not saying you should just go and start reading books, but let there be something. Let there be
Yeah.
let there be something that you can gel with your supervisor. Let there be something. And sometimes you can't even plan it. It happens. But it only happens when you're true to yourself. I see a lot of people when they meet their supervisor, they are different people. They're different person altogether. And then when they leave there, they're a different human being. So they put up this facade, they are not real, they're not true to themselves. I was in an interview recently, and then the lady was talking about being authentic. She said it in German, authentisch. And I think they really enjoy that. I mean, I also will love somebody who is authentic, who doesn't just kind of put on a facade. You are authentic, and people can actually read through that when you're not really showing your real self,
Yourself.
and then you kind of
Except
like,
if your real self na bad character. Just keep your real self at home.
and then who wants to deal with someone who has a bad character?
Bad
Because that bad
character.
character will only show up one day when they hear your story outside, or how you drag somebody's coat on the street,
On the
and then you're
train.
coming, and then you're coming to the office to ask one spirit cocoa. So in the end, it tells a lot. So the whole point here is being authentic with yourself, but also put in some work in improving your way, your attitude. In a way, it will speak for you. So for me, it was just this little hobby of being an addict of reading books and reading novels that just sprinkled like a spice when I was talking,
I
and then
love
it
her.
kind of like boiled into a very big stuff. So, and it can be in anything. It can be that you love, like what you're doing now, talking about life in Germany. You never can tell where this might kind of like be a discussion point. And then so now, how this plays out in relationship with supervisor, if you keep nurturing it, and and then once the person likes you and you're true to yourself, you see things playing out. Even when you're stuck, he goes out of his way to do things for you. There are times when I've had challenges, and so one day, and I didn't want to share with him. So one day, I mean, he found out. He now called me and asked me if he was in Nigeria and he got stuck.
Will you not
Won't
help him
you
out?
exactly? That's kind of like changed the perception for me.
Cool. I think it's also a part of integration, when you try to integrate with the place that you are. Because if you have already given yourself, I imagine that if you didn't want to connect with the people as well, you might not be open to be having those kind of conversations where you guys are able to, share experiences with your books and stuff. So I think that also plays into being prepared to integrate with the people that you're with, the people that you're working with, the people that you're living with, and the society and society at large as well.
Integration is a lot easier when you know who you are. You are true to yourself, so you know who you are. Then you can see how you can navigate in that culture you're trying to integrate. But if you come with a fake self, how can a fake self integrate? Because one day you'll be found out. So the integration will not really blend very well. And I think this is where a lot of people have issues integrating properly, because they want to like cast off their former self I wouldn't really say former self, because once you're true to yourself, even if you're changing, that changing will keep reflecting. So as you're changing, you're evolving to whatever you're integrating into. But if you're denying your true nature, then that integration becomes one day it will show.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I get where you're going to. So in the sense that the fact that you're in a new place, you're trying to blend in, you're trying to, like we said, integrate, doesn't mean you should cast away your origin, your heritage, your who you were as a person before you came here.
Yeah. And let me touch on something, because there's also difference in experience with gender. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um for women, you also find it a little bit different. Um
Okay.
yeah. So I give you an example. There's a lady who came. I had to go pick her up from the airport. I didn't know she was pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't tell her supervisor, who she's going to work with, that she was pregnant. To her, she felt this was her private, it's her personal business. So why should I tell him that I'm pregnant? But then the
Which it
kind of
is, to
PhD
be fair.
anyway, yes, it is. It is
Mm-hmm.
personal. But if you're going to work with someone and you have to use the lab and use some equipment and chemicals,
Chemicals
you
and things
should
like
let them
that.
know your condition. And this guy rejected her.
Mm.
So on arrival, no supervisor, no accommodation, a lady who is pregnant. So she was really left in the dark.
Hmm.
But fortunately, she was able to get somebody after putting to bed who was able to accept her. Now, should you tell your prospective supervisor that you're pregnant or you have certain elements? I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. But what do you think? If you're in that lady's position, you're pregnant, would you have told your supervisor that, okay, see you, I'm
Mm,
pregnant? Given that you're going to work
I
in the
think
lab.
just like you have said,
Mhm,
depending on what it is you'll be working with, and depending on the kind of environment that you'll be in. So as not if I'm personally, if I know that this is what I'll be working with, this kind of environment I'm going to be in, I should be conscious of does this put me and my baby in danger, you
mhm,
know? So if I feel like it shouldn't be a problem, then maybe I might not be inclined to say. I might just want to just go and then also depending on how far along the pregnancy is. Because I
mhm,
would imagine that if it's an early pregnancy, I honestly don't see any need to tell anyone. But if it is far along, because it impacts the work you'll be doing as well with these people, they also need to know that okay, you'll be leaving for your maternity leave for maybe in the next 3 months or 2 months or 4 months or something. So I would think, in my own opinion, I would say, depending on the situation, depending on the how far along the pregnancy is, and depending on you, if you just feel like you should give. But in this particular case now, which obviously the environment you should be working in is not one that is safe for pregnant women,
yeah,
then I think it would make sense that you already talk about this already. Because it's even possible that if she has spoken about it, maybe the guy would have said, okay, just give birth first, and
yeah,
then we can continue from there.
yeah.
Probably that would have put it in a better situation. But then, sometimes you cannot really say if you're not in the situation.
Yeah.
It's easy to give advice when you are not inside the.
Well, I mean, I thought in that situation the supervisor would understand with her and said, okay, um, let's have you get settled and then have your baby. Then we can talk about, maybe you can
Continue,
start
yeah.
with the literature review and some things that don't have to do with you coming to the lab. But then
Mm.
people differ.
And in fact, now that I think about it, that's discrimination.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, yes, because
Well,
why he could have done exactly as you have said. Okay, either let's do this first and then let's continue on this part later, or let's take a pause on your process and then give birth and then we can continue. But just
yeah,
outrightly just kicking her out was unfair. In fact, we should
no, wait,
protest
but wait. So
against
for
this guy.
instance, when you have so in her own case, this guy has a specific research, a project, and she's coming in at a certain stage to continue,
And it is
right?
time sensitive,
And
yeah.
it's time sensitive, And then for such projects, you have to order some reagents ahead of time. They need to be used at a certain time, and these things are already put in place because he's expecting her, and he doesn't want someone to come in and then start delaying before starting.
Yeah.
Okay, take for instance, I had a student back home. She wanted to do her. I mean, I'm just looking at the dynamics generally in kind of gender differences. We already had everything settled. I was planning to leave. She was supposed to be my last student to supervise before I leave. And then we had everything well planned out. And the plan was that she would get to a certain stage of the research work, of her research work, and then she can do the writing, and then we can complete that. And then she says that she wants to be away for 2 months. She's going for a wedding, for her wedding. I felt that you should have told me at the beginning so that I can put it. So probably we should have started with the research work earlier when she was doing her little, what do you call it, chapter 1, chapter 2,
Literature
chapter
review.
3. So we would have actually done that. So that completely spoiled my entire plan. When I was expecting her to be in the lab to do the work, she'll be away. So
It's a complicated place to be,
exactly.
honestly.
So
To be
some
fair,
things
it's
that are supposed to be
complicated.
personal also interfere with the process of work, or the
And
fluidity
needs
of
to be
how
done.
things should go. I mean, if she had told me earlier on that, okay, these are my plan. My wedding date has been scheduled for the next 2 months. So I can also plan myself and also plan for her. And she knows
But
I was
let
traveling.
me let
She knows
me
I
let
was
me be
traveling.
the devil's advocate for her because it's a
Okay, yeah.
wedding. Not
Yeah, go ahead.
exactly like a drastic life-changing thing that means that she cannot work or anything. I
Yeah.
think she doesn't owe anybody any explanation whether she's telling you or not telling you about her wedding. But however, it shouldn't affect her work. That is the part that I don't agree with. If you are planning for your wedding and you are not going to be there or whatever, then you should let people know on time. But
Yeah.
if you don't think it will affect your work and you don't want to tell anybody, fine, it's all good and fine for you. However, it also depends on what are the laws around this. Like someone has even just said now in the question, Queen, Esther, hello, thanks for joining. So Esther has asked that does employment laws cover PhD students?
That's for PhD students that come in as the research grant.
Oh,
So we
okay.
have the TV13, I think TV13 or TV65. So I mean, okay, the salary scale is like they call it TV13. I don't know the entire explanation to that, but yeah, they are covered, but it's temporary, okay, because this is very slippery here. Since you're coming in with a research grant,
Work contracts.
you are paying taxes. They're taking taxes from that money. You see on paper they're paying you so thousand, but what you're getting in your account is different because you're working, right? So there are certain laws that's covered, but I'm not too vast on that, so that I don't say one that will mislead anyone. I'm not in that category. I came with my early
With a student
scholarship,
visa.
the
Yeah.
student visa, but I can also find out from people. But I haven't. It's very rare. So in the case of this employment, I guess what it will mean is that if the PhD of the person will be terminated, I guess that's where this employment laws covering the person. I have seen students whose PhD were terminated, but this is a case where the person came with a scholarship. I haven't seen someone who came in a research grant whose PhD was terminated. Maybe
Terminated.
there are, but it has to be a very strong reason, even for the scholarship, because there's one that happened recently. In fact, the case is still on anyway.
I
It's for
think the
that.
question came from the issue with the woman with the pregnant woman and stuff. I think probably that's where that question
Oh no,
arose from because I would also
came.
imagine that.
Oh yeah, so she came with her own local scholarship. That was where the thing
It's
was.
even
Yeah,
worse.
yes, exactly.
Even
She came with
worse.
her local scholarship, and I think that really kind of annoyed the guy. So with a local scholarship, he wasn't even sure how the money would come. Maybe one new legislation will just sign and cancel the whole thing. So he wasn't really so certain about it. Then on top, you're not annoying me. You're not telling me that you also want to delay my research work. So at that point, he hasn't really accepted her.
Accepted her.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So
so
if that is where the
Esther was saying
question,
that she asked because if she's an employee, she cannot be
she's
sacked
not.
because of
No,
pregnancy.
no. She's not an employee. And this is also something that some of our people should put in, should have at the back of their mind. If you're taking a PTD of scholarship or a Nigerian or any of the African scholarship, it's either you take it for a short term if you're traveling outside the country, or you utilize it in the country that's giving it.
Cool.
Because if you
Oh,
move out with it, it's risky.
it's risky, but
It's very, very risky. In fact, I heard there's a new circular out that all those who are currently being sponsored with a PTD or with some of this TED fund scholarship outside the country ceases. Only those who are outside will be funded. But after the current funding, it should be terminated. But anyway,
terminated.
our focus is German scholarship. But for this
Have you
woman, but for this woman, she came in with a Nigerian scholar. But the
with the
reason why I
Nigerians?
brought it up is in your preparation to come, the kind of information you should reveal and the kind of research work. If she was dealing with kind of like a research that has to do with economics or social work or any of those things that don't require you to go to the lab, then I don't think it's anybody's business.
Yeah.
But she's coming in not just with a German scholarship, no, not with a structured PhD, but with a traditional PhD directed to a project in the lab whose funding is already there, equipments are there, and things that are supposed to be done instantly on arrival, and then you carry Bele, come. It scatters everything.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it makes. I think it makes some sense. Really,
yeah,
it's better the guy cancels it than accepts her, and then she gets into problem with the pregnancy, and then he probably have to start explaining to lawyers why did you allow her to
yeah.
study in the first place.
It's actually not allowed to allow a pregnant woman into a lab, a scientific laboratory. It's not
I
allowed.
didn't know that.
Yeah, during my masters, we had the same thing. I had a colleague in my batch. Towards the end, while we are doing our research work, she took in, so she didn't graduate with us. Yeah, and the funny thing
Alice,
was, yeah, and then she put to bed. Maybe I shouldn't say this. When she puts to bed, and then we're now graduating, and then she's pregnant again.
oh, that one is different. It's a different conversation. It's a different call. Let's finish. We'll finish it.
So,
Anywho,
but the main input
okay.
is this is the kind of information you reveal while coming and the kind of PhD you're doing. So all this stuff is done by the side, but the main input here is you should know the kind of research work you're doing, the kind of PhD, and then what you need to reveal.
Real.
To what extent do you reveal them? Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about working conditions. So, what are the typical working conditions, the working conditions and expectations for PhD students? Right now, we even talked about briefly about working in the lab and things like that.
Mm.
But what are the working conditions like for PhD students?
So
I'll say the two types. Probably, I'll say two types. No, I know there's one that you're just going to you just focus on the academics, and
yeah,
and then there's the one that you're doing, which is the industry and academics, and there's probably the one that is just industry, I imagine. So maybe
yeah.
you can explain to us how this
So
works.
um, so if you are in a project in an institution, so there's a likelihood that you will help out with the research work of your professor, which includes supervising master students, designing experiments for them, which is separate from your work.
Ah,
It doesn't count
okay.
for, yeah, because it's part of your duty. And then at the end, well, it might also contribute, but that is not the main focus of your work. So you are carrying that as a research assistant or as a PhD student supervising the master student. You can also be assigned to teach courses as well. But then you have your own work to do. In some cases, I can only speak for those of us that work in the lab. In some
Okay.
cases, you have lab assistants, the technical staff assigned to you to help you with some experiments. Um, Sometimes you do it by yourself, or you now incorporate those master students
Mm-hmm.
to carry out your own experiment. Um, in some well-structured laboratories, you have like a whole line of research work that you kind of break it down into certain bachelor's projects or master students project, and then everything combines. You can add it to your own research work as well. There are occasions where a company will want to try out certain elements of whatever chemical they're producing, and they bring it to the institution, and then you will not be assigned to that. That doesn't count as part of your research work, but you're doing it because you are employed in quote to that research project. So we have cases where a chemical company will bring in their one of the reagents, and they want to like do like a laboratory trial in an institution.
Mm-hmm.
It's that go ahead that they've done it. I mean, we also do that in Nigeria as well, where chemical companies will come to our department to try out certain things so that they can get um, um, that trial that, okay, we have done it in this institution. So it gets a
Mm-hmm.
check from an academic point of view. But aside from that, you have your workspace, you have your office or your workstation, as the case may be, where you sit down and then you kind of like do your reading and writing, and then you can interface with the lab. Um, I started out with a normal office, but before I now moved to the lab, I went to the field for about 8 months. Then I spent most of the time in the lab. Sometimes you stay for like from 7 a.m. to around 12 p.m. That's why that guy that came the other time saying that PhD students, I have issues with that guy.
Everybody and their own. Though you have said your own experience, his
Uh-huh.
own is back to
So,
back. His
so
own
because
is not that crazy. So everybody and their own.
exactly, so you would have made the distinction now. You would have made the distinction and say, for some,
Don't worry, don't
he's
worry.
flexing.
We know that we
But they are,
know that you are going through a lot. We know.
because I know you are coming for me when you say some of my friends. Then
Yes, I was going to say some
I
of my
knew,
friends. That
I
was in fact you were the first person that came to my mind when he said
I
that. I said my
knew,
friends are always saying they want to kill them in this PhD.
I knew. But but in the end, you have a very conducive working condition. You have like, but some offices are better than others. There are some that are so cramped. Like when I was in the lab, the workspace was really so cramped until when I was done with that, with the lab work, I moved to a different institute. So I went to a different institute for the lab work, then moved back to my institute, which is quite
Mhm.
conducive, which is quite conducive. So I don't know if I answered your question, kind of working condition,
Yeah,
but if you were talking
I
about the
think
workplace,
generally.
the work environment, as far as I can tell, other people might have a different, different story to tell. But
Mhm.
I really love my workspace. I really
So
love
it's
my
like
work.
it's just like going to work every morning,
Yeah,
like
of
a
course, you're
regular,
going to work now. Of
like
course, you
like a
arrive nine
regular
o'clock
job.
in the morning. It's just that you don't. Well, you kind of like clock in because they watch when people come to work. Not that you just go and then resume by 11 o'clock, except if you have a solid
Mhm.
reason. Um, but the good thing was that when I arrived, it was during Corona, so I have my workspace. I mean, you've been to my place, so at least say I have my small corner of my workspace
Mhm.
where I kind of like do my
Can
own,
focus.
own stuff. Exactly. But aside from that, and many institutions have now taken out this idea of work at home. Everybody
Yeah,
office.
I think globally now a lot of people are forcing their staff now to get back to the office. No more work at home since. So, as
Yeah,
Esther said, not just marry until you finish the PhD. So people like you that went to go and marry before PhD, so you people
I
have
think
two wives.
it's yeah. I mean, if you also want to delve into that, I think it's very important. It's very important because it affects ladies a lot more than guys.
Mm,
Um, it affects ladies a lot more than guys. Because PhD is already demanding on its own.
mm-hmm.
And you now have one guy having his own emotional demand as well,
True, true.
balancing it. And then he probably will not understand why you need to work so late to finish up a manuscript or to read up this one. and then he doesn't take that serious. So it's a really a huge burden. I can't speak for guys because guys always have their way, but I was fortunate that
He said,
before.
"Guy, you know a guy. Those people is
No,
before." In
no,
any
I mean
case,
single guys.
I don't feel
I mean single guys. I was already married before I came here.
before
I
you
think
started.
yeah, I was, and that really kind of gave me a very clear headspace.
Mm.
Yeah, especially having someone who understands what you're in, because
Mm.
sometimes the PhD can also scatter family because especially if there's no clear understanding. Because I'm coming here to do PhD, and then there's that clear support, and but where guys who have families come over here, and then the family is not here, and they are battling to bring them over. So they are battling with a PhD here. They are battling with looking
It's
after the family
reunion
back
visa.
home, and then they are battling with the reunion. It's a hell. Honestly, it's a
That's cool.
hell. I would say I was very, very lucky. I was very, very lucky. Someone informed me ahead of time, and this kind of goes back to application phase, that when I apply for the visa, my wife should apply as well.
Okay.
What we normally hear then, and you don't get this on the website. What you hear then is that you arrive first, you spend 1 year, and then you now invite family.
But how is she applying? What she applying as? Is she applying as? She applying for family reunion visa or whatever.
Exactly.
Ah.
Applying for
Oh, that's
family
actually very
reunion
smart.
while I was
You already
applying
have
for.
some head start.
Yeah, so I wasn't even here, but she's already applying for family reunion. And it doesn't sound right, because someone has to be there first. They're now going to
I
reunite with
think
the
in this
person,
case
right?
it's different because you have funding.
Yeah, but even with the funding, you're going to reunite with somebody, right? But you and the person are still there in Nigeria, and the person's applied to go, and they also applied to go reunite with the person.
I think, to be honest, I think it's logical because
Well, okay.
there's a very high chance you will get the visa anyway, and if you get the visa, it's still the same thing. I don't think there's a. I don't
My
think the
so
next.
I didn't even know we were going to get the visa together. Mine was applying for the appointment to have it on the same day, so that we can trash out any question on the same day.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we got it. So I wasn't even thinking about getting visa. It's getting the
Ah,
appointment. So when
appointment. Yeah.
I applied a long time, and then there was this,
Mhm.
Corona stuff. They canceled all application, and then we kept going back and forth, back and forth.
Mhm.
Then I gave me a date. So I now quickly put in a word and said, "Okay, can my wife come with me?" And then she immediately applied, and
Mhm.
then it was like a slot, and we went there together. And I, and
Ah,
I think
that's
and I
super
think
smart.
the person who interviews plays a big role.
That one na standard now. If
Because
everything,
that day we that day,
every visa application, the person who is interviewing you, if the person is in a bad mood, sorry.
I'm telling you, that day we showed up with matching dresses, went there, and then the woman was like,
Best in
I'm,
uniform.
I'm telling you, the woman looked at us and said, one Nigeria.
Uh-uh.
We went in like green color and stuff like that. So I had my own session, and then she asked me to leave. Then I sat down with my wife for like 2 hours. I don't know what they were discussing, asking how we met, my salary,
Yeah,
how long did we be.
that's usually the process for
Yeah, and
reunion.
then filling in those kind of
Crazy.
forms. You write your name and number and address of your neighbor, all your family members, and then pictures of your wedding, pictures of those who were at the wedding, and then
If
you now
what if
bring
you
it.
did the wedding? What if you did the wedding inside your living room?
And
Oh
you will
God.
explain. So, and then
Oh
you
my
also bring
God.
money. You also bring money to help them move around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I came with the money, but then she said, well, since they did the scholarship, that they don't need to, that they will cater for that. So she said I should carry the money
Okay.
and go and take my wife on a date. What did she even say?
Kim on
So, but
enjoyments, girl.
when when the visa came out, the initial idea was that I would come first, because
Mhm.
what I had was student accommodation now. When the two visa came out, I was shocked. So I started asking her, Madam, what did you tell that woman when she was interviewing? Because up to today, she has not told me everything. So I was really surprised that
it's
she
all
got the
right.
briefing.
People will still do family meeting for that one later.
I'm telling you exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about opportunities for PhD students in Germany. So, what opportunities are there for people both in the academia area and the industry?
Well, I can speak for my field.
Okay.
It's a very practical field. You can interface between institution and industry. So the crop protection field, it's quite dynamic, but it's very practical as well. So you have people producing stuff to be used on the field, either golf field or farms or in the laboratory on the greenhouses. And you can be in the academia, but also working as a consultant in the industry. But when you talk about career growth,
Mm-hmm.
as a Nigerian, I'm an old man already, as I am like this. I'm calculating how many years I'm going to be if I decide to be in the academia here before I become a professor, because there's a time limit of how long you can be on that job before getting a tenure position.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how long will it take, especially for our field that is very practical and it's quite technical as well.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the humanities or the social science field, it's relatively different. So you have people who started early who kind of continue their academic line. Of course, there are research projects and there are collaborations, and then they continue to grow on the ladder. Um, but personally, because I have a position back home, um, I'm always thinking about how to collaborate, how
Mm-hmm.
to liaise between my exposure here, the opportunities I have here, and how it can positively impact on my institution back home. And because gleaning from the experience of what happened during my masters,
Mm-hmm.
because I was a staff back home, I was able to build that relationship. And I have seen other people, like other professors from Nigeria, who have come here to spend a number of months or years, and then they become like that bridge between their home country and here, while also consulting for private institutions as well, or private companies as well. So I am leaning towards that, being a bridge between my home country and here, because in the end, it's not just about me. It's also about what legacy I leave. Because if all of us now leave and say, okay, we want to now live here and create our career here, then what happens to what we left behind? So I'm more of looking at the legacy that I'm keeping, because while I still have a position back home, they're generous enough to, release me for this time period. I also want to, uh, pay back. That's the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Payback. Yeah, but also be that, also serve as a conduit, or as a channel for people who also want to experience these as well.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from talking about my personal leanings, there are lots of opportunity in the academia, but much more in the industry, because one of where we come from.
Mm-hmm.
Tenureship is very competitive. I know of there's a colleague of mine, supervisor, retired. She was the last student. He's a German, but he retired before becoming a professor, because there are always slots, there are openings. So when there are openings, people now apply to those
Mm-hmm.
openings to become professors. And there are certain ages they consider. So if you have a certain slot and then you have lots of application, people who will make it become professors, the other ones will remain and they'll keep
Mm-hmm.
aging. And then you have a new
Yeah.
opening again, they will start considering the younger ones now. So imagine that even Germans are stressed, finding it difficult to occupy this position, let alone, I don't want to, go into that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, you have to be realistic. You have to be realistic with
Exactly.
what your reality is. Yeah.
So, and getting into the industry again, specifying with my own field is relatively easier, but then it becomes tricky with some conditions like the language.
Mm-hmm.
Most companies would prefer that you communicate with
Speak
them in
good German.
exactly, except for companies who are of German origin, and then they want someone who will represent them in their offices in other countries, other English speaking countries. So that's also an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity as well. The other opportunity in Germany is for maybe American companies or British companies that have a branch in Germany and they don't really
Mm-hmm.
care about your German competency to a
Yeah,
large extent. But then the likelihood that they will go for a German is actually higher
I
because when when it comes to the laws and stuff like that, they consider Germans. So there are different there are different
like
ways to look
pros
at it.
and cons and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. But me personally, I want to serve, be that bridge. Um,
That's
I want to
cool.
help people,
That's
I want to help people.
that's cool. That's Esther says she wants to partner. So
Partner with
you've
what?
seen you've seen partner. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, so we have already taken 1 hour 30 something minutes. So I want us to
Really?
begin to, yeah, it's been long. You have been here for such a long time. So I want us to begin to wrap up so that we don't take too much of your time as well. Meanwhile, I do appreciate you being giving us this time so freely. Thanks. Okay, so I want to ask you three more questions and then we would call it a day. First question would be um sorry, one moment. The first question would be about this supervision system. How should students look for, what should students look for in a supervisor? But we have talked about relationship with supervisors
Hmm.
and and things like that, and even how to go for your application and stuff. How do you or what do you look out for in a supervisor? Or do you even choose your supervisor? How does this even work?
Yeah, yeah. Well, for a structured program, you have very limited choices. For traditional, you have to look at the profile. Most times, the supervisors, you get to meet them when you attend conferences or you look at their publications or you watch a panel discussion where they spoke, and then you start creating that in a collaboration. So you don't just meet someone out of the blue or from nowhere. You need to like have some built
Like
up trust.
background information about the
Exactly.
person.
And then the person also does some background with you as well. And this is only on the professional setting, on the research part. So you cannot really glean the personal, how the person will treat you. You can't really know
Mm,
that until you start working with them.
yeah. Mm,
But you can do a lot as a student for yourself. And this is where I started with this book. It was recommended in one of these training sessions. It's called The Unwritten Rules for PhD Research. It's
let me
such a
write it.
nice book. Yeah, The Unwritten Rules for PhD Research. It's such a nice book that I think is by Maria Patry and Gordon Rook. I can actually write it. I can find it. It's such a nice book that it went through the first edition, second edition, and it's currently on the third edition. So when a book
Sorry,
goes
the
through several,
unwritten rule of PhD.
yeah, PhD research, the let me kind
Search.
of like the unwritten rule.
So I've written it on the.
Yeah,
Mm,
okay. So I can actually copy it out. The unwritten rule of PhD research. Exactly. So there are first edition, second edition, third edition. Why I love this book is that it really goes practical. What is expected
mm,
of what the supervisor might likely not tell you.
mm,
Things that you should start, doing as a student that can actually help you build that relationship. It's a very, very impressive book. It's not so big. I mean, I've read it, a couple of times, both first, second, and third edition. I think there's a good place to start. Um, maybe, well, I wouldn't say having another session, but if there are specific questions curated towards this angle, then we can delve more into it later on, because a lot of people get their feet stuck in this interaction, meeting people, because you have a first supervisor, you have a second supervisor, right? And navigating between this relationship can be very tricky. Like the case of a guy who wasn't in good terms with the second supervisor, and they keep pushing him back and forth. The first supervisor will say this, the second supervisor will say the contrary. But the two of them don't want to quarrel. So the guy is the grass. Well, they're not really elephant fighting, but this one doesn't want to step on the other's foot. So he doesn't want to say that, okay, this guy is wrong, this supervisor is wrong, but he's saying you as a student, you are wrong. But he knows that two of them are conflicting. In the end, one of them wrote something against the student, and the other one could not counter it. And then that's how they relieve the student. They kind of like dismiss the student. And
first of all, you should not be quarreling with your supervisor.
No, but you can be in a situation, well, I don't really know the specifics of this particular student, okay?
Yes.
But there are also a case in my own batch. I think 2 people actually left. Well, in any program, there are always people who will leave. Okay, especially when you start digging into it, you now start looking at what really caused it. But there is no single person to blame. Everybody played a role in it.
A part, yeah.
In the end, who suffers most is the student, especially a student who came in looking for an opportunity to brighten their future, looking for a career path. People who actually put in lots of money, spend lots of time, borrowed money to come here, and then they get disappointed. So it's a different thing for
really sad.
For European to get rejected or to leave his PhD. It's completely different case for us as immigrants, knowing where we come from, knowing the kind of expectations from our families, the kind of burden on our shoulder, and then you get your PhD terminated. So it's a whole. So it's not just about the PhD; it's also about your life. So it's quite deep.
Crazy stuff. Anyway, that's the next question I have is the balance. How do you create balance between your research, your teaching, and personal life as well? Bearing in mind that we've already said down a PhD is a second wife. So how do you balance this?
I think it varies with individuals. I made sure that I expose myself to lively opportunities, to things that help me grow, but also help me have fun. Okay, for instance, I belong to the Bonn International Toastmasters, where go out and meet people from different places, the top professionals who are outside my field. But while I'm there, I'm also crafting my skill in speaking. I'm crafting my voice. I'm crafting my confidence in standing on stage, because one day, I go to go conference. I will make presentation. But it's outside my PhD, right? I'm meeting people from a different walk of life, and it's very social. And at the end of the day, we'll go to a bar, we drink, we have fun, we network, and also expose ourselves to opportunities. And sometimes you just hang out, and then you go for fun. And if you have a partner, in this case, maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend or your wife who supports you, then it makes life a lot more easier. No, doing this thing alone is very hard. It's very, very hard. So honestly, if my wife wasn't here, no, it was hard, I swear. No, it's really, and not just, I mean, someone who understands your journey, who understands what you're doing, who also kind of like understands it, and then knowing fully well there are days when you will stay till 5 a.m. in the morning, and days where you will not be back from the office till around 10 p.m. or 12 a.m., understanding that this is not going to happen forever, it's just for a short while. But also, the individual has to realize that, okay, I have a body to take care of. I need to go for my checkup. I need to take care of my mental health. I need to eat properly. I need to do the normal exercise because a dead body cannot do PhD. So,
PhD.
now,
True.
because
True.
there are cases where people just drive themselves so hard and they break down. Um,
Mm,
I know someone who who chose a very unhealthy eating lifestyle.
mm,
It affected her neural system. Now this person is now selecting food. They place the
mm,
person on a program, and this was preventable, and it affected the entire PhD journey
mm.
completely. And then you see people who now overstay. I know of people who are already in their 10th year. Yeah,
What?
exactly. Yeah. I know of people who said, okay, I'm going back to my country whenever I decide I can defend online.
Come back. Mm,
I'll come back and defend. So there are cases like that, but it still boils down to how you manage yourself. So it's
mm,
personal. I cannot give like a rule book and say, okay, uh, do certain things at certain time. But
mhm,
there are givens, especially for us who have black skins or vitamin D don't process properly. Uh, we have limited vitamin D exposure because of our dark skin. So
mhm,
taking your vitamin D daily, and for some people, there are also recommendation of higher doses. Um, doing very healthy stuff that helps your mind. Because if you don't have a right mindset, honestly, you cannot work. And you can't
mhm,
even go for parties. You can't even go out to have fun. Even when you're having the fun, you're feeling guilty. I'm supposed to be reading, I'm here having fun.
mm.
So
True.
you are not here, you're not there.
Yeah.
So creating that balance is key. How to do it really varies with individuals, but there are certain basics that cannot toy with. Eating
Mm,
properly, having your exercise, and then during winter taking your vitamin D. Um, I think during last year winter, I really had this very, very tough blackout. It was very dark, so you wake up in the morning, everywhere is dark. You can't even walk. You want to read,
mhm,
you are sleeping, right? So
mhm,
my supervisor and told me. I mean, I opened up to him, and then he told me about this light. It produces like 10,000 lux. You see it in
mm.
the morning, and then you expose
Um,
yourself to it.
there's a light
I
box.
mean, I have one. I have one right here. I mean, oh sorry. Yeah, this one here, this light here.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
during winter, I turn it on and then sits in front of it for like 30 minutes to, help kick, you know. So for me, this is one way of maintaining like a healthy lifestyle,
Mhm.
where you're creating that balance. Because if you don't create that balance, when you're having fun, you feel guilty.
Guilty. Yeah. Mhm.
You're having fun when you're supposed to be working. And then when you're
True.
working, when you're there in your desk, you assume you're working, but you're not really working.
Working. Yeah.
You're just there. And
Mhm.
yeah,
That's cool. I also suggest that to also find activities that you enjoy and find people that you can do them with. So if
true.
you can go look for meetup groups that you can join that do things that you like. If you play ball, if you do tennis, just like you do with your Toastmaster thing. So
Exactly.
able
Yeah.
to find some outlets to socialize and stuff. So
Yeah.
this is really really fantastic.
True.
Now, beyond all of this, final thoughts. What's your final? Because we've talked about balancing your lifestyle. So
Mm.
beyond this balance, what other advice would you give to people who are planning to relocate to Germany as a PhD student?
Relocate.
Yeah, like,
Know
come
what you're
move
coming
to
for.
Germany.
Know what you're coming for. I think that's the most important. Know what you're coming for.
Mhm.
Because some people come, they will just want to leave and escape the country where they're coming from without any proper plan. And it also matters if you're coming alone or you're coming with a partner. Because most
Mhm.
times we assume that PhD uh, students or researchers already kind of advanced in their life and they probably have a partner, but not all of
Mhm.
them anyway. But for those who have a partner, know why, know that you're coming into a new country with your partner, and then you know what you're coming in for. Because I've seen cases where people move and then things change, and then either it leads to divorce or separation. Be prepared. It's financially intensive. Scholarship will one day end. What will happen after it? The research grant, your time would run out. What will happen after that? So exposing yourself to, I want to say, because this might, dive into finances and stuff like that, but finances is a very important thing. Just put it generally. So put your financial acts together, and then if you're coming in without a job, hoping that at the end you're going to get a job, know fully well that time runs, especially during this Corona time. I think after Corona is like the 24 hours shortened to 18 hours or 12 hours. Because I remember when I arrived here, and now this is getting 5 years already. So you're saying that, okay, next year I'm going to do this, next year I'm going to do this. Before you know what's happening,
it's
time
gone.
has passed. So you can't entirely know what will happen, but if you have a clear plan, at least you have a template to compare what is happening in reality. And say, okay, where did I fuck up? Where did I kind of like miss the track? But if you don't have a plan, so what are you comparing it with?
Comparing, yeah, true.
So there's no template, there's no baseline to compare it with. So have a clear plan, and also have like a timeline. Okay, by this time to this time, I should have done this. I had like some timelines that some of them have, kind of met, some are still lagging behind, but that's life anyway. But if I didn't have that timeline, I would kind of like be floating,
Yeah.
And since you're moving to Germany to stay in Germany, especially if you want to build a career in Germany, there's nothing you can do in Germany without at least the basic of the language. And depending on your career, the proficiency will vary. There's some career that will require high level proficiency. I think the nurses have is the hardest. I don't know how those guys do it, but they found a way to achieving it, no matter the kind of accent they use in speaking the German. German is German, as long as you understand it. But there's some careers that don't really require high level of proficiency, but just know that you still go to the market, you still go to the tax office, you still get letters in your box every single day, you still pay that radio fee I have to pay every 3 months, where you don't even know why you're paying it. Some people would like to dodge it, but you can't dodge it. So having a very clear idea of what the country you're going to, what the life is like, especially in Germany, and how the politics will kind of like change things, because the way things are going now, nobody knows CDU, SPD, Green Party, or righty, so
They want to
lefty,
give us
AFD.
hypertension,
So
but
you
our
never
God
can
is
tell.
bigger. Our God is bigger.
So always have a plan B,
Yeah.
because some of my colleagues are moving to Canada because they're beginning to realize that this German is not Germany. Have a plan B, and they say plan B doesn't work. What else again? I mean, there are 26 letters, eh? So
I mean,
yes, now. So
keep planning backup of the backup of the backup.
yeah, because okay, take for instance what's happening in the UK now. We don't know what this sister is doing. Should she enter now? What happens, or what happened in the US now? Just one person entering and then changing everything overnight. So nobody knows. So what happens when a different party, comes in and then they start changing everything for us. But one thing I will also say is that find a good community that will help you grow. A good community that will
Very
help you.
important.
It's very,
Very,
very
very.
important that you find some people, no matter how few, that really have your back. For instance, my accommodation, I had this accommodation before I came here, which is very rare. Like moving from a student apartment, then my wife is coming with me. I have to start looking for accommodation. So if I didn't have people that help me navigate and show me the way, I would really find it very tough getting an
Difficult, yeah.
accommodation in Germany while still in Nigeria. I mean, it's really quite tough. So having people that can put you, help you guide, people that can guide you, but ultimately have a plan, know your timeline, have alternatives, contingency plan for contingency plan, and then those contingencies will also have contingencies as well,
Contingencies, yeah. Mm-hmm.
just in case. Yeah. So, but that's this ultimately like kind of covering those moving here for a career change, but know fully well that no PhD has ever gone like 100% the way they expected it. Like the direction my PhD is taking right now is not the direction actually envisaged, But be ready to move with the flow. Be willing to move with the flow. Okay, don't be a rock. Be the tide.
Yeah.
Because there's this joke that say between a rock and a tide, which one is stronger? People say, "Oh no, a rock is a rock." No, it's actually the tide because the tide shapes the
The
flow of the
rock.
tide shapes. So be the tide, get with the flow, and then you get your result. If you don't get the right result, you still have to
Pivot
manage.
again.
Exactly. So changes will happen, unexpected things will happen. God forbid, but health challenges might also kick in because you're going to get older. And then, of course, relationship will kick in either with your partner or with somebody else. It will affect the whole dynamics because in the end, it's still one individual who is doing all this thing.
All
One
these things,
individual.
yeah.
There's not as if there's one AI impersonating you handling religion or handling relationship while you are handling research work.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
is both here in one person. So
Oh.
mistakes will be done, but then shit happens, but you pack the shit and then get done with it
You move on.
and clean it up and
Thank
move
you.
on. Yeah.
Super. I also want to add that I always add this to every life or every conversation I have about moving to Germany. Is be patient. Be patient with yourself, patience with the people you meet, patience with the country, patience with everything. And secondly, don't come with the mindset that some people are just against you, that some people are just going to treat you badly, or you're going to be racially discriminated against. Don't come with that kind of mindset. Just come with the mindset that you know what you're doing, you know what you bring to the table, and you're focusing on your focus. Because if not, when we think about some of these things too much, we see discrimination sometimes when it is not actually discrimination. So I always say this, almost every life I say, guys, as we are doing what we are doing and moving and doing all that stuff, let's be very open, as open-minded as possible. Of course, no lose guard, but don't also put yourself in a position where you are seeing evil everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. If not, it will just be the only thing that your reality is. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And it has been a fantastic, fantastic time. So, guys, thanks for also being here. We have been here for 2 hours. God,
Whoa.
2 hours.
Okay.
But thanks for sticking with us till this time.
Thanks for
So
having me
until
as
the
well.
next live, do have a fantastic, fantastic day, guys. Ciao.